Jenna was a vegetarian and an athlete, and just plain beautiful. She ate vegetables, fruits, and other healthy products, practiced drinking, and regularly went to a beautician. And of course, has long ago excluded alcohol from her diet completely. Also, the girl practiced meditation and believed in positive thinking. But this evening, Jenna forgot everything she had adhered to so long and passionately. She sat on the floor of her office, drank wine straight from the bottle, ate pizza with bacon, and cried bitterly. The reason for this was as old as the world. Her husband had cheated on her. Although it would seem there was nothing to portend trouble. Jenna grew up in a well-to-do and loving family. Father Charles, a respected dentist in the city with his own clinic. Mother Vanessa, a lawyer working in a prestigious law firm. The girl had no siblings. Jenna was a late child. Vanessa and Charles did not manage to become parents for a long time, despite the opportunity to be examined in the best European clinics. However, they eventually became parents. When the mother was in her early 40s and the father was nearing 50, Jenna used to like to ask her mother what kind of treatment did help. But the woman was reluctant to answer such questions. Eventually, her daughter stopped asking them. Jenna was raised like a snow maiden, outfits to suit every taste, clubs, sections that not everyone can afford, horseback riding, language camps in Malta, tennis. At the same time, the girl, although she was outside the village, excessively capricious and was not distinguished, for her parents were strict about it. They themselves came from simple families. They achieved success in life through perseverance and endeavor. Daughter, never make yourself better than others. Life is unpredictable. Climbing the stairs to the top, don't forget that you can always fall down. So be friendly to everyone you meet on your way. Since she was a little girl, her daddy had taught her. Jenna kept her ear to the ground and tried to follow these principles. Besides, her father was an unquestionable authority. The Jerome family itself has been involved in volunteer work all their lives. They helped refugees, bought hygiene items for them, and bought necessary furniture for nursing homes. And Vanessa periodically conducted free legal counseling for the poor. But the family had a special passion for animals. Jerome themselves had 2 dogs, Golden Retriever and Kurt, Sugar and Persian cat. When Jenna was little, the house also kept parrots, hamsters, fish, and a turtle. In addition, the family took care of 2 horses at the racetrack where the daughter practiced. It was for this reason that the Jerome's greatest philanthropic endeavors centered on Vega's private dog shelter. It was maintained by activist Michael Laird, who put all his energies into this event. Helping him were volunteers and children. Laird had 2 sons, Jacob and Mason, and a daughter, Wendy. The man lost his wife early in life when she died of cancer. Barely a youngest child was born. He truly loved dogs and spent all his energy making sure they were well. At different times, there were from 40 to 60 dogs in the shelter. Jerome bought food for dogs, paid for expensive surgery for animals, gave money for boxes for new pets. And Jenna, out of the kindness of her heart, often came to Riga herself to help clean up the place or walk the dogs. She was horrified by the conditions in which the stray dogs had to live. She saw it as an injustice that they could not live like her retriever and Kurt Sugar. You could say that Jenna even felt guilty about it. Trying to atone for it, she began to go to Riga more and more often. At first, her father drove her. When she got her license and a car as a gift from her parents, she started driving herself. She was friends with the entire Laird family, and the middle son, Mason, her age, was in love with the benefactor. At first, he hid at nights, ineptly gave out, blushing beggars at the sight of the girl's cheeks, and whole mountains of compliments with which the guy bestowed the guest. One of them. During a joint walk with dogs, he confessed his feelings to Jenna. The girl, though, felt awkward but was forced to refuse the suitor. And it was not even about his social status. She didn't care much about such things. Jenna believed in love at first sight. Like Mason, she felt nothing. He was a very nice guy, but to a girl he could only be a friend, nothing more. Mason, I love you very much. You know that, but as a friend. You and I have been through so much with this orphanage. It's hard to believe. No offense. You're bound to meet your princess, Jenna justified. I don't need any other princesses. I need you, resentfully replied Mason. Well, alas and alack, we don't always get what we want. But that's okay. Then there's a better option for us, Jenna countered. But from the hurt look in Mason's eyes, she knew she hadn't convinced the guy. Besides, think about it. We're not even like friends, we're like brother and sister. And I'm warm to Jacob too, and to Wendy. I mean, I've dreamed of having a little sister my whole life. But it didn't happen, as you can see. Another example of how wishes don't always come true. But luckily, Wendy came into my life. We're 5 years apart. She's so tiny and so sweet. I love her so much, Jenna replied. Mason calmed down a little and they walked back toward the shelter. They were greeted at the entrance by Wendy the loner. I ruled the dress, the new one you gave me that time. I went for a walk with Barbosa, and he just stood up on his haunches and threw his paws on me and left a trail. Can you imagine? It's a pity. I liked it so much, complained the girl from the doorstep. It's nothing, Wendy, it's nothing. I'll buy myself a new dress even better than the old one. You'll flaunt it, replied Jenna. She really periodically presented her young friend with nice gifts of outfits, jewelry, cosmetics. Sometimes she gave her own, and sometimes she bought something new. My parents were not happy about this initiative. Jenna, you have to keep your distance and subordination with people. First of all, they may perceive your gestures as handouts. Secondly, envy has never been canceled. It's enough that you're helping the orphanage so actively, doing even more than you have to, her mother told her. Mommy, Wendy is so wonderful, and these outfits won't cost me anything. And to her joy answered, opening wide her doll blue eyes framed by fluffy black eyelashes. Jenna, you don't know life at all yet, dear wise, Vanessa answered her. The girl only dreamily shrugged her shoulders and climbed into the online store to pick up a new blouse or skirt for her friend. As for the profession, the parents really wanted their daughter to follow in their footsteps, would be a doctor or lawyer. I don't know about a lawyer or prosecutor, but you would make a wonderful pediatrician. You're so kind, so caring. Besides, her uncles and aunts liked to give her A's in chemistry and biology. Jenna blushed embarrassedly, thanked them for their kind words, but did not answer anything. Back in 10th grade, she decided for herself that she wanted to pursue mass communications. She was attracted to social networks and everything connected with them. This world seemed mysterious and knowledgeable, and she wanted to dive into it. Jenna had excellent grades in chemistry and biology, but anatomy didn't appeal to her at all. She also knew history very well. In the 11th grade, she got very high scores in these subjects and entered the budget department of the capital's university. She was to study management, marketing, and mass communications. Her parents were not happy about this choice, but since democracy reigned in their family, they did not interfere. Besides, the principle of making their daughter happy has always been paramount for them, and Jenna was truly happy. Jerome rented an apartment near the university for her daughter and sent her to Moscow for 4 years. They didn't know if she would want to come home afterward, but they hoped she would. Studying was given to Jenna easily, classes were interesting. Classmates are sociable, contactable, teachers strict but fair. The scale of the capital did not frighten the girl. She liked the rhythm of the big city and a lot of opportunities that opened before her life in Moscow. Already after the first course, she got a job in a large agency. There she went from an internship à la serve and fetch to a good specialist. The work brought good money, and at some point she began to rent an apartment at her own expense, refusing to support her parents. Those rejoiced, although sometimes her mother still said, and still a pediatrician from her would have turned out even better. During her college years, Jenna was focused on her studies and work. She had no time to think about boyfriends. She had a couple of flings, but nothing serious. Just a fling. After studying, she was offered an internship abroad, and Jenna agreed. She spent a whole year in the US. It was like a fairy tale. The girl authentically fit into the atmosphere of the American dream. She felt absolutely comfortable among skyscrapers, city crazies, rappers, and Hollywood smiles, and even managed to spin a romance with a local jazz musician boyfriend. The story turned out to be very romantic. The couple even rented a trailer on wheels and traveled across the country for a couple of weeks as if it were a movie. But, as before, the girl's priority was work. Romance was really distracting her. Yes, and to admit honestly, the guy was too dreamy and Russian. Therefore, soon traveling, their relationship came to naught. However, the girl achieved her main goal of gaining new knowledge and increased competence. She returned home as a person with a completely different worldview and a vision of what new things can be brought into her field. This was something that few of her domestic colleagues could boast of. After arriving in Moscow, Jenna was immediately promoted to head one of the key divisions of her firm. Life was booming, the girl was happy. But as it often happens, if everything goes smoothly in one sphere, another begins to collapse. Charles became seriously ill. He was already over 70. Sore joints were becoming more and more frequent. Stomach problems were affecting him. But most importantly, day after day, his eyesight was visibly failing. The ophthalmologist even said that there was a threat of total blindness. Charles stopped accepting patients, left to take on management positions in his clinic. His daughter, he's going through a very difficult time. First of all, he's been a dentist all his life, and it's not easy for him to sit idle. But his health doesn't allow him to pick up tools and fix people's teeth. Secondly, he has his detractors. Those people whom he considered not only partners but also friends, like hyenas, are ready to swoop on him and do everything to take away his business. Vanessa confided to her over the phone with concern in her voice. "Mom, take the reins, take Dad's place and everything will be fine," Jenna advised her. "It's not that simple, daughter. I'm not made of iron either. I have my own job that I love, plus taking care of Daddy. He's almost like a child now, and in spite of all the adversity, we still do a lot of charity work. We recently bought a new refrigerator for a nursing home, and the other day we'll go to Moscow State University. It's been a month since we've been there. Besides, don't forget how old I am. I'm not much younger than my father. A couple more years and I'll retire. I don't have much strength. And if you get involved in the fight for your father's clinic now, you're going to put yourself in the coffin early?" Vanessa's got it all figured out. After talking to her mother, Jenna lay awake all night. She felt guilty for focusing too much on herself and forgetting about her parents. Those used to be brave enough not to complain about anything, but there wasn't enough to go around. Plus a really advanced age and aggravated sores. Jenna knew what his clinic meant to her father. He'd built it years ago from scratch, saving money for it for years. He'd invested all the family's savings in his venture. The risk of the clinic going under was high. Vanessa understood that, but she didn't even try. After all, we already know the story. As a teenager, Jenna asked her mother how she decided to do this. "Daughter, you should have seen her father's eyes when she talked about her clinic, about what doctors she would call there, what equipment she would buy, about the unique surgeries they would perform. He just glowed. In the evenings, you could even leave the lights off. Was I afraid of being left with nothing? Of course I was. But I just couldn't take away that hope, that joy. I realized that even if we lost, we'd still be able to get up off our knees and start from scratch. And if we won, we'd be the happiest people in the world. And so we did." Vanessa told me, "You know the wise Italian proverb, family is not the point." "Family is still the same," added Charles with a wink to his daughter. In the days following the conversation with her mother, those words wouldn't leave Jenna's mind. She began to think about going back to her hometown to be with her family, at least for a while. But taking a vacation right after her promotion wasn't an option. Management wouldn't understand. Then she decided to talk to her boss about a remote work schedule, at least for a while. And they agreed. Jenna packed a suitcase and went 1,000 kilometers away from Moscow to the house where she grew up. Everything there was native and familiar, but as if doll-like than what the girl had already grown out of. It made Jenna a little sad. But much more reason for sadness was her father's condition. It was much worse than she'd realized. Charles was indeed practically blind. Even glasses with the most powerful fashion tracks didn't help him much. At home, his mother took care of him. He never went out alone. At least not with his guide dog Rick, who had recently been adopted by his parents. So that's why they need a new pet, realized Jenna, who had not previously explained the appearance of another dog in the house. On the background of the achieved troubles gave up in Mom. She lost a lot of weight and wrinkles appeared. Her expression was almost always sad, although she had smiled before. Jenna was bitter to plunge into reality. She wondered how she could help her parents. "For us, the fact that you came to visit us is already a good help, my daughter," Mom answered. "You're not going to run the clinic in your father's place. Do you have enough to do?" "No laptop. so just be happy. That's all we need. Jenna stayed with her parents for a month to relieve her mom of some of the housework. She cleaned, made lunches and dinners. One weekend, together with her mom, she decided to drive to Vega. The gate was opened by a scowling young man. At first, she didn't even recognize him as Mason. Michael. Age had not spared either at all, became weak, and his business had actually passed to Mason. His eldest son, Jacob, on the contrary, has distanced himself from the family, moved far away. He's working for the police, I think, Mom explained. Okay, what about Wendy? Jenna asked. Oh, Wendy is a beautiful girl. What a girl. A bride's girl, all curly red hair and green eyes. She's a sight to behold. Oh, she'll break men's hearts, her mother continued. Jenna smiled, and the women entered the courtyard. The orphanage was noisy, but not as noisy as before. It had gotten noticeably quieter. Mason is not as passionate about the cause as Michael is about supporting the shelter, more out of respect for his father. There are only about 20 dogs left, at most, Vanessa explained. Where did the others go? Jenna found out, so we can only guess. Mason himself says some of the dogs died, some ran away. But people say he poisoned some of them and let some of them loose. And who knows? It's all rumor. But the way things are going, the shelter is being run exclusively for Michael. Mason would probably get rid of all the dogs by now, but he knows that if he did that, his father's heart wouldn't be able to take it. I'm sure when Michael is gone, so will Vega, Mother replied. I see. It's sad, Jenna said. The woman shrugged her shoulders, as if to say there was nothing to be done. But from sad thoughts distracted the survivor of the house, Wendy. Mom had not been deceived. The girl did indeed possess genetic beauty. How long it's been, how long it's been. How nice to see you. Still with the same directness shouted daughter Michael and threw herself into Jenna's arms. Wendy, honey, I am also very happy to meet you, said the guest, opened her arms for her friend. How beautiful you look. Thank you. You don't. A metropolitan thing, of course, but by our provincial standards, very even nothing. I know, Wendy joked, but that's enough for you. And in Moscow, such beauties are still to be found. And natural. You should play in the movies, said Jenna. What a movie? Sadly replied her friend. Daddy's no good. Mason is mean, always looking for a dog. Jacob hardly talks to us at all. He doesn't like the whole shelter thing. You'd think I do. But I don't have to choose. It's my dad's life's work, after all. Come on, let's get back to work. I know you've been to America. And the friends, taking a leash with several dogs, went for a walk with them. During the walk, Jenna told about her work, the trip to the States, and the social life of the capital. Wendy listened to her with her mouth open. I envy you, Jenna, and I can't help it, but in white, of course. Don't think about yourself, Wendy. Oh, come on. You've got a lot ahead of you. You're obviously very bright. Tell me, how are you doing? The guest inquired. To business as Jacob Bill, I study in the Industrial Humanitarian College at the Department of Computer Systems and Complexes. Well, all sorts of technical stuff. I'm honestly not interested in it at all. Plus, I don't know much about it. It's the pretty eyes that save the day. I asked the boys in my class to help me. They're happy to try. With their help, I pass my exams. And in general, of course, I'm wildly interested in what you do and everything. I even do a little part-time social networking in this field. I've been hired by an acquaintance to run a bar. That's where I get high. And that's what I like to do. I make all kinds of beautiful pictures, captions, contests, Wendy said. Wow, that sounds awesome. You just got to keep at it. It's a promising line of work. And when you grow up, I'll invite you for an internship in Moscow. Jenna said cheerfully. Visibly laughed back her friend. After that, the friends led the dogs back. The month flew by unnoticed. Although it was not easy for Jenna, working remotely was not so easy because the managerial position she had recently taken up involved a lot of face-to-face meetings and behind-the-scenes conversations. All of this was carried over from home, making communication less effective. Nevertheless, the girl realized that she had made the right choice. After spending time with her family in Moscow, she plunged back into work, and now there was nothing to distract her from it. She fully met the expectations of the management and proved that she had been sent to the USA and then promoted for a reason. In a few months, their company's performance had improved and the number of clients had increased. Jenna thought that her life had finally started a white streak, but it wasn't. One night she was awakened by her mother's call. With a trembling hand, Jenna pressed the accept button. "Hello, Mom, what's wrong? Is Daddy all right?" she asked in a trembling voice. Yes, my daughter, don't worry. Everything is all right," my mother replied. I could hear that she could barely contain Vanya's sobs. "I mean, he's alive, but he had an accident. He went outside, or rather with his dog Rick. They've done this many times before, and everything was always fine. But this time the dog twitched, God knows what came over her, and let Bibigan go forward. Dad ran after her, slipped, fell and hit his head. He's in the hospital now. I didn't want to tell you at first not to upset you, but then he's not getting any better. He has a closed head injury, so I couldn't resist dialing you. I'm sorry I woke you up." "You what?" "Thanks for calling me. Don't cry. Everything's going to be okay. I'm leaving for the airport. I'll be on the first flight out," Jenna answered, and I started packing right away. By Sunday afternoon, she was already in her father's room. He had regained consciousness, but looked extremely exhausted. He could barely help his tongue and couldn't hold a spoon. "Papier is here. Everything's going to be all right. Do not worry about anything. Gain strength," calmed his daughter. She took a week's vacation at her own expense. She stayed with her father the whole time. She took him to the best clinic. He was prescribed a good treatment, and by the next Sunday the man was noticeably better. But he was still not awake. Vanessa went to see Jenna off at the airport. "You know, honey, I've decided to retire and take care of my father." "That's okay. We've got the supplies, we've got enough. Plus his clinic. So far, we've been able to hold on to our assets. I don't know how much longer," Mom admitted. "As much as I hate to say it, you're right. I know how much you love your job, but you see how things work out. Family is the most important thing," Jenna replied. "No, honey, family is everything." Vanessa smiled. She hugged her daughter and said goodbye. During the flight, these words did not go out of the girl's head. This time, on her return to Moscow, the hearty metropolitan rhythm did not distract her and did not relieve her relatives of their worries. To visit them often was not possible. All the same parents lived in 1,000 kilometers there, do not fly there, do not go all to take them to themselves also so an idea. Old people, accustomed to a more measured rhythm, will not be able to get used to the endless race and quickly wither. The only thing left was to return to the small homeland. At first the thought cut Jenna to the core. It seemed to her that this comeback would bring down everything she had worked so long and hard to achieve over the years, that everything she had done before had been for nothing. But Jenna had never been a pessimist. Besides, her trip to America had taught her to think positively. The girl began to think about whether there were any advantages to moving. At first, it seemed that there were no advantages at all. But then she realized that there are, and they are quite significant. I am a good, qualified specialist with rare, even unique competencies for our country. However, there are still specialists of my level in Moscow, but not in the provinces. This means that there I will be able to build a real empire from scratch and be the only one of my kind. Plus, I will take my profession to a new level, thought Jenna. The girl decided to consider the move as a kind of challenge, and a couple months later she wrote a resignation letter. This shocked the management, but it entered into the position of the employee. Jenna packed her bags and returned to her hometown, where she was familiar with every street. Her mother had retired by then, as she was about to do. The family's income, used to living large, had fallen. Jenna realized that now she would have an additional financial responsibility. The girl planned to open her own agency, but first she had to solve the issue with her father's clinic. She took care of business matters, put the partners in their place, and let them know that she was not to be trifled with. Charles' condition had improved considerably, and he was even visually younger. His mother was happy too, but Jenna had no time to relax. It was time for new accomplishments. She studied all the local business centers and rented an office with the best of them. In Moscow she earned well and spent little. The savings should have been enough to open her own business. But it was an all-or-nothing game. There were risks, but Jerome's family had already had a successful experience with her father's clinic, and that encouraged Jenna. The room with panoramic windows was on the 16th floor, and the view was breathtaking. We needed to hire experts when it came to finding employees. For a company that hasn't opened yet, this issue becomes more complicated. Few people want to take the risk of getting involved with an unknown person. But Jenna knew all the tricks of advertising and eventually lured the best specialists in the city. To begin with, the staff was small, only 5 people plus herself. But they were real professionals. Jenna understood perfectly well that it was not about quantity, but about quality. And already in it, she was sure. Thanks to a well-constructed advertising campaign, the agency grew and attracted more and more clients. Jenna's name was known at the Russian level, and that is why large companies represented in the region were coming to her. The hired employees justified themselves, everyone worked professionally, approached the business attentively and responsibly. After 6 months, Jenna had already recouped its costs and reached zero. Joyful prospects loomed ahead. This positive outlook encouraged the girl and allowed her not to think about how her career in Moscow might develop. "Aren't you thinking too much about your career at all, my daughter? What about your family and the children?" her mother told her. "I loved my job very much, you know that, but it wasn't my first priority." "I understand, Mom. All in good time," Jenna said wisely. The girl herself was beginning to worry a little about her personal life. In Moscow, this was not so striking, as there are more career-crazed workaholics there. But in the provinces, people think differently and prioritize other things. Plus, childhood friends, having learned about Jenna's return, began to call her for walks. During the meetings, it turned out that almost all of them are already married, many of them have children, some of them even have several. All this made Jenna more and more often think about marriage, but where to look for him. The man of her dreams. The girl thought no longer as romantic as in her youth. She no longer needed one single prince on a white horse, with which will happen love at first sight. It was enough just a reliable man. The main thing that he was caring, responsible and loving, as it often happens. A chance helped. Jenna had little free time for entertainment, so a suitable candidate, which is not surprising, was found thanks to work. Lately, all the girl's attention was focused on her agency, and her father's clinic she practically did not engage in, staying in the confidence that after her first intervention, everything was fine with her. But as it turned out, not everything was so rosy. One day she received a call from an unfamiliar number. "Jenna?" asked a pleasant male voice. "Yes," the girl answered in surprise. She was rarely addressed by her first name and middle name. "Hello, my name is James Keat." "James, you may remember me. I'm one of your father's partners, also a dentist. Actually, I'm calling about the clinic. There's a little problem, but it's not a phone call. I'd rather discuss it in person." "Do you have time for a meeting?" asked the man. "Sure," answered Jenna. "Let's do it tonight." "Why wait? Would that be convenient?" "Yes, then at the Luna restaurant on Green Street. See you then," the man said and hung up, just when life was about to get a little better, and now it's all falling apart again, Jenna thought disappointedly. However, where have we been? We'll get through this. She came to the restaurant straight from the office in comfortable clothes that she had gotten used to wearing back in the USA. Go with a bright print ripped jeans, sneakers, a bundle on your head. Even in the capital, it was the order of the day to go to entertainment venues in such a way. But in the provinces, it was still customary to dress up to go to a restaurant. Jenna realized this when she entered the room. An elegant man in a business suit and tie was waiting for her at a table. He was about 15 years older, but looked very youthful. He had a charming smile and dimples on his cheeks. Jenna laughed. The contrast in their images was too obvious. She regretted that she hadn't worn a dress today, even though she'd had such thoughts since this morning. But there was nothing to be done. She had to take the charm. Besides, she reminded herself that she was not here for a date, but for a business meeting. "Jenna, good to see you." James politely rose from his chair, greeting the guest. "Can I just be Jenna?" "I'm very rare." "By patronymic?" The girl replied with a smile. "If you say so. You've been to school in the capital. Is it really common there?" James replied kindly. "Well, let's get down to business. I've called you here to inform you of an impending riot on the ship, or rather in the clinic. A number of the partners are serious about throwing you below deck and leaving the reins of power solely in your own hands. But why should I trust you? Jenna asked cautiously. I understand your fears, but you can ask your father about me yourself. I think he'll give you a very flattering account. I have always respected him and considered him my main mentor. He himself treated me like a son. In fact, I am one of the few partners who served him faithfully for many years. James said persuasively, Well, let's say I believe you, but it doesn't scare me. Mutinies on this ship happen with enviable regularity, but the ship, fortunately, is still afloat, and it's run by my family. Jenna answered boldly, No, that's not the case at all. They've brought in the best lawyers and come up with a completely fraudulent scheme. If you don't intervene and retaliate in time, I'm afraid your family will be overboard. I'm sorry, the man replied. What kind of retaliation are we talking about? Jenna asked. I'm not a lawyer after all, but I have some good experts. I know your mom worked in this field too. But with all due respect to Vanessa, it's not her specialty. She's been practicing family law all her life, and this is about finance, big money, and serious scams, James explained. What do you suggest we do? Asked a worried Jenna. I know it sounds presumptuous, but I suggest you just trust me. I'll look into the matter and try to work things out. No guarantees, but I'll do my best. Trust me, James said. Jenna froze. There was too much at stake. It wasn't just about the thriving business of the clinic that had fed their family all their lives. It was about their family's honor, their reputation. The girl realized that if she herself interfered in these disputes, she would lose too much strength and energy, which could affect her own business. And she couldn't let that happen. The only thing left to do was to trust this charming and trustless stranger. Well, do we have a deal? Jenna said decisively and gave James a handshake. Thank you for your honesty. I hope you're not cheating. I'd appreciate it if you could really help. I'll do my best, I promise, the man replied and shook the girl's hand. The gesture was firm and strong. Jenna decided not to tell her parents about this conversation and not to bring her father up to speed. He had already lost a lot of weight lately, and sad news could only make things worse. The only thing to do was to wait. Several times during the month, Keith contacted me and told me in detail what he had done. He sent a number of documents as proof. It all looked very convincing. Jenna was pleased. In the end, after a couple of months of financial and bureaucratic wars, the man, as promised, achieved a peaceful resolution of the conflict with little bloodshed. The clinic was retained by the Jerome family. All the other partners were removed from the ruling. The only one James had left was himself. With your permission, of course, he clarified. Of course, we don't mind. Thank you very much, Jenna said. She finally told her father. He just clutched at his heart as if he were listening to a financial thriller. Don't worry, Dad. There's a happy ending to this story. We settled. And the main character is, of course, James, the daughter explained. Just James, the man corrected with a smile. The business dealings brought the man and the girl together, and romance broke out between them. It didn't burst into flames, it started gradually enough, but eventually developed into something more. Jenna was delighted with James's manner, his value and education, and the man admired the brightness and boldness of the girl. In due attraction, Jenna joked as she announced their union to her parents. Parents rejoiced, but soon Vanessa had a frank conversation with her daughter on the subject of love. Daughter, you are an independent girl, and no one will challenge your choice. But my job is to warn you. James has the role of the heroic lover. He's considered a noble heart, a honey. Why do you think he's in his 40s and still single? So you take your time looking, Mom said. Jenna nodded, but immediately forgot her mother's warnings. But there was no stopping Jenna. She plunged headfirst into their James and immediately felt 5 years younger. It seemed that James felt the same range of emotions. A month later, Jenna moved in with her lover. He had a spacious apartment in the city center. The marriage proposal was a logical continuation. James asked Jenna to become his wife in an ancient manor, where they came on a tour. In fact, everything was pre-planned. The man ordered a violinist, who at the right moment began to play a romantic melody. James got down on one knee and handed Jenna a ring with a large diamond. "Will you be my wife?" he asked his beloved. "Well, of course, yes," answered Jenna and threw herself into the arms of her lover. All this was captured by a photographer invited in advance. Weddings were going to be lavish, according to their position and status. It was important for Jenna that the ceremony was not too pretentious. As a result, she took as a model the ceremony which she herself attended during her life in America. Off-site registration on the shore of the lake, arches of flowers, live music, champagne buffet. There were not many guests, but each of them was worth its weight in gold in every sense. Guests rejoiced. Only Vanessa at times warily nodded her head as if she sensed trouble. But Jenna did not even want to think about anything bad. For the first time in her life, she prioritized her personal life over her career. She wanted to enjoy every moment of her honeymoon, which, by the way, took place on the ocean. Everything was like in the movies. The young never once quarreled. The couple seemed to be in complete harmony. You see, it's good that we got married at a mature age, when both of us had played and understood what we wanted. Jenna used to say to her husband. It was definitely the spouse who responded. Upon their return to their homeland, they returned to their usual routine. Both immersed themselves in work, for each was a workaholic. Things were going well at Jenna's SMM agency. She began to think about opening a branch in a neighboring city and even went there for reconnaissance. James took over the clinic. Jenna was virtually completely out of the picture in this matter, and that provided room for maneuvering. "Daughter, I couldn't have dreamed of anything better for you," my father said affectionately. On the background of the change in their family, he began to feel noticeably better. He even took up Nordic walking for joy. Jenna hugged him back and smiled, and only Vanessa did not share the general enthusiasm, but also wisely stayed out of her daughter's personal affairs. It turned out to be so cool when you have a reliable man around you who takes on some of the responsibilities both at home and at work. It's good to be strong, but not too strong. I can't believe I'm saying this. But it is what it is, the girl said. Jenna decided to expand the staff of her agency, again looking for the best. Even poached her former colleague from Moscow, Emily, promising her an impressive salary and interesting tasks. She could afford it. But she was not only recruiting ready-made specialists. The businesswoman liked to put young blood to work. Jenna knew from her own experience that young guys are often much more energized to work than their more experienced colleagues. In addition, young people literally spout new ideas, and the salon manager encouraged it. Most often, she looked for young employees through recruiters or recommendations from colleagues. Sometimes she brought them in herself. This was the case with Wendy. Already after marriage, Jenna crossed paths with a friend on the street. Wendy is flirting with some guy. One look at the couple was enough to realize that the young man was crazy about her. But noticing Jenna, Wendy easily left her beau and, without saying goodbye to him, ran up to her friend. "My darling, hello." The affectionate, cunning as a fox, the girl began the conversation. "Wendy, hello. It's so good to see you. You are more beautiful every day," said the business lady. "Oh, come on," said the girl coquettishly. "But this is evidenced not only by my observations, but also by the attention of guys. There is no shortage of suitors, right?" Jenna continued with a smile. "Is that so?" "Yes," replied Wendy, and then continued. "What good are they? So beggarly romantics. And you are quite pragmatic for your age," shared an observation friend. "If you want to live, know how to spin," joked Wendy and changed the subject. "What are we talking about, me?" "Yeah, about me. Cavaliers are one thing, but a husband is another. Congratulations on your new status." "Thank you, my dear." "Thank Jenna. I hope you have chosen a man worthy of you," Wendy said with a smile. "With your regalia, you can't have just anyone. Now you've embarrassed me with the regalia and the regalia. But in fact, all of us women want the same thing: to be loved, cared for, and allowed to be weak at least sometimes." Jenna shared her wisdom. "Golden words, Wendy. How's it going? Did your husband surround himself with love and care?" "Yes," the newlywed replied briefly and smiled. "Oh, I'm jealous. Beat us, of course. This is cool," summarized her friend. Then the girls began to discuss work. Jenna said that she delegated the care of the clinic to her husband and concentrated on the agency. This activity gave her more joy and brought her more money. After all, she was an expert primarily in this field. She didn't know much about medicine. "And who are your clients?" Wendy asked curiously. "Alas, there are a lot of them, and they are very different. We work with individuals, developing their personal brand, and with companies on their online image. There are catering chains, flower stores, furniture stores. There's a lot of people. Why do you ask? The businesswoman asked. If you remember, last time I told you that in parallel with my studies, I also started working on social networks. Then the client was one. Now there are already 3. So you and I are in a sense colleagues, but on a different scale. Wendy explained flirtatiously. Listen, this is so great. How would you like to work for me? You'll get all the experience out of your paycheck. I won't hurt you. I'm sure your clients pay you less. I plan to open a branch in a neighboring city, but our staff will also expand. So there's room. We need talented people. I'm all for creativity. How's that? Jenna asked. I would be honored, Wendy said cheerfully and clapped her hands. That's nice. Why didn't I think of that before? I'm getting old, joked the business lady. Oh, come on. It's okay, when can I start? Wendy asked with burning eyes. First of all, do you want to work in this city, or are you willing to move? Jenna asked. I don't have any other option in this one. Father is getting worse day by day. Mason is getting angrier by the day. We can't handle the dogs anymore. There are fewer and fewer of them. Wendy answered and blushed. Where are they going? Wondered Jenna. Well, said Wendy evasively. Okay, I get it. Let's not talk about it. Glad you accepted my offer. The other day. If I live with you, I'll tell you when you go to work and what exactly your duties will be. Summarized the mistress of the agency. Do we have a deal? She kissed Jenna on the cheek and ran away, saying goodbye as she went. In the evening, Jenna told about this meeting to her husband and added that she decided to hire the young friend. Honey, sometimes you surprise me, James reacted to the news. You so carefully monitor the reputation of your agency, carefully choose employees, pay some of them a salary higher than the Moscow salary only for the sake of the best to work with you. And here suddenly ready to take a girl off the street, pardon the frankness. Critically evaluated the idea of Jenna's spouse. Don't be like that. Snobbery, romance. First of all, she is not a girl from the street, but a smart girl with experience in this field, albeit a little. Secondly, one of the missions of my agency is to help young talents and give them a path to life. Important, Jenna replied. Oh, you're going to regret that. Mark my words, James would continue to growl. I won't. And will you help me with that? You teased him, girl. I wonder how. The husband wondered. For starters, I'll put Wendy in charge of our clinic's social media, and she'll be under your supervision. And you won't let anyone get away with it. I'm sure of it, said Jenna. Good, you've got it, of course, James noted ironically. I don't have anything else to do. Don't worry. I'll get Emily to help. It's no coincidence I lured her from Moscow. She'll supervise Wendy and steer her in the right direction. That's great. I got it. Tell me. Jenna asked excitedly. I'll never tire of admiring your entrepreneurial spirit. She's the man. But all business ideas I propose to postpone for tomorrow, and now to do something more interesting. James smiled slyly. He took his wife in his arms and carried her into the bedroom. She didn't even think of resisting. The passion in their couple was still there. Jenna believed it would always be like this. The next day she contacted Wendy and informed her that she could go out from the beginning of next week. A joyful squeal sounded through the phone. Jenna herself was pleased. She was in a happy phase of life herself, and she wanted to do good for others. Wendy came to the office on Monday. She looked around the skyscraper office with undisguised interest. Panoramic windows, spacious modern technology, friendly coworkers. Jenna really has assembled a great team. I can't even believe this is all happening to me. Pinch and I was happily melted by a new female employee. She clearly had a lot more to learn, but she was willing to learn. In addition, at such professionals you really are unspeakably lucky. So don't blow your chance, Emily told her, who had given Wendy the role of supervisor. Jenna arrived at the office a little later than her subordinates. When she crossed the threshold of the agency on Monday, she was pleasantly surprised to see that Wendy had already made the whole team feel comfortable. Employees were laughing and discussing curiosities from work. Well, that's good. So we consult, the business lady made her verdict. Definitely. The new employee answered her confidently. Jenna was not mistaken. Wendy was indeed very bright. She quickly learned new material and grasped all the subtleties. But the owner of the agency decided to ask Emily for her opinion about the newcomer. "How is she to you? Do you work more closely with her?" she asked her Moscow colleague. "She's very spry, charming, and active. That's definitely a plus. But she's got a kind of slyness about her. And even a worm of a worm or something, you expect her to be a trick or something, don't you?" Emily shared her opinion. "Oh, come on, don't." Jenna waved her hand. "Time will tell," philosophically summarized her colleague. After a couple of weeks of internship, it was decided that Wendy could be safely connected to specific projects. First of all, it was about the clinic. "Oh, that's so responsible." The new employee replied excitedly. "But I will not let you down, already, be kind," Jenna answered her with a smile. To get a better idea of what she would be working with, Wendy went to the medical center for a tour. She was taken there by her boss. "I have not been there for a long time. It is time to visit," she informed her subordinate. James met them at the clinic. He kissed his wife and greeted the new employee. Wendy, as usual, was extremely friendly and sweet. "It would be an honor to work with you," she said, and gave James her most charming smile. "That's nice to hear," the man said. "Well, that's good. I see that you two are already in contact. The clinic will be your main project for now, Wendy. You won't have to be here every day. But you'll still have to stop by occasionally to take new photos and gather texture for your posts," Jenna explained. "I'd love to. I like it here," Wendy replied, still wearing the same smile. That evening at home, Jenna decided to discuss the new employee with her husband. "What do you think of her?" she asked her husband during dinner. "Not as bad as I imagined," replied her husband. "See, I told you she'll go far, you'll see," said Jenna, and poured tea for herself and her husband. With Wendy's arrival on social media, the clinics really came to life. The number of followers grew, the reach increased, the content became more colorful and engaging. The business lady was happy that her gut had not failed her once again, and she had brought a strong player to the team. This allowed Jenna to focus on opening a new office with a clear conscience. For this purpose, she had to travel often to the neighboring city, sometimes for several days. But the business lady made business trips with a clear conscience. The agency worked as a well-oiled mechanism. The health of her parents was improving. In their couple with her husband reigned harmony. And only her colleague Emily realized that full harmony in the union of Jenna and James to talk about is not necessary. She continued to supervise Wendy and noticed that she was too frequent at the clinic. "I don't think it's necessary to be there so often. Photo, we have enough factoring, you can dial in and on the phone," Emily said. "Oh, I don't go there that often," the girl replied. "Besides, there is actually more work than you think. We want to get a good result, right? The results for this clinic are already impressive. Don't forget that you've added other clients, switch to them," the supervisor said sternly. "Okay," Wendy poked Wendy unhappily. She was much less friendly with Emilia than she had been with Jenna. The curator also reported the behavior of her subordinate supervisor, but Jenna was adamant she was very sympathetic to her protégé and refused to believe that she was underworked somewhere or, on the contrary, overworked. "It's all clear to you. You've fallen under the spell of that redhead's revenge," Emily summarized. "What are you talking about? First of all, she's not a beast. She's just a talented girl with a personality and colorful looks. Second of all, I wasn't under anyone's spell." "Well, you know I'm a tough cookie," her boss insisted. "But you're fine, as long as someone else doesn't fall under the spell," Emily added. "What do you mean?" Jenna wondered. "Nothing. Just wishing you well." "Okay, let's wrap this up. I'm going to our new branch today. It's a 3-day business trip." "I haven't packed yet," said the business lady. "Have you been traveling a lot?" a colleague asked. "Well, what to do?" "Nothing. In a month we will already be down, and there will already be a team on the ground," explained the agency owner. "I see," replied Emily. The girl did not explain to her friend the reasons for concern, although they were really there. One evening she happened to drive by the clinic and saw a couple kissing right around the corner. The romantic picture caught Emily's eye and she slowed down. What was her surprise when she realized it was Wendy. Not with anyone, but with James, who had accidentally witnessed the picture. The girl felt sick. She hurried away from the clinic. For the next few days, she had one thought on her mind. Should she tell Jenna about this or not? On the one hand, it would be honest. On the other, it might break her friend's heart. After all, it was a betrayal by two close people at once. And to interfere in other people's relationships is a thankless thing. However, soon another colleague came to Emily. He said that the topic was sensitive and said that he had also seen Wendy with James. Both loved their boss and wished her well. It became clear that there was no way to keep quiet about it. But there had to be proof of the affair, otherwise Jenna might think she was just being lied to. I know what to do, Emily said confidently. The girl had access to the CCTV footage not only in the agency, but also in the clinic. Jenna had installed them herself, including in her husband's office. She did it for the transparency of business negotiations. But life happened in such a way that they came in handy for personal reasons. Emily decided to study the records. Stumbled upon a racy video with James and his red-headed mistress was not difficult. They were frolicking right in the office, right on the couch that Jenna had bought. Emily waited for her friend to return from a business trip and called her for a difficult, frank conversation. The friend stayed in the office after work. Emily turned on the video on the monitor. Jenna's cheeks flushed, tears streaming from her eyes. No way. What a bastard. What did she do to me? She did this to me? I wished her well, screamed the cheating wife and threw the monitor off the table. Emily lowered her gaze and stood silent. Jenna, clogged in sobs, warmed on the chest of the viper. And you, Mom, you warned me. And why didn't I listen to you? Jenna didn't stop sobbing. What are you going to do now? Fire Wendy and get a divorce? Emily asked. That's one thing, but not all at once. Revenge is a dish best served cold. It's James' birthday in a week, an anniversary. We've rented a restaurant. We'll have tons of guests. I was going to show a video of the couple on the big screen, but now I'm replacing it with something hotter. Let everyone know about his love life, Jenna said with anger in her voice. Emily didn't say anything. She supposed her friend would change her mind. But she was adamant, pretending that nothing had happened. She was still talking to Wendy and acting out her feelings for her husband. You have no idea what it's costing me. Very nasty, she confided to Emily at lunchtime. Finally, the birthday party arrived. The restaurant was decorated expensively and lavishly. The birthday boy wore an expensive suit that he had custom-made for the occasion. On his hands shone a status Swiss watch. James himself was also shining. Jenna did her best to pretend that she was happy too. There were an unprecedented number of expensive cars in front of the place. The whole color of the city, from the authorities to businessmen of all stripes, came to the Jubilee. There were there and subordinates of the Jubilee and employees of the agency, including Wendy. She came to the celebration in a green Mini, which favorably took away her fiery hair. She simply glowed. Naturally, there were also Jenna's parents at the birthday party. The celebration was led by a toastmaster. He alternately passed the microphone to the guests, and those said toasts. Many good things were said. James was praised for his loyalty, professionalism, and diplomatic skills. When Jenna heard the word loyalty, she could barely contain her laughter to make it easier for her. The girl was illegal to drink. By the end of the party, when it was the turn of the surprise video, she was already drunk. Emily saw this and, knowing what her friend was up to, was very worried about her. More specifically, she was worried about Charles. She realized that this would be a blow to him. He would be worried about his deceived daughter and the fact that she was stabbed in the back by his student, associate, business partner, the one from whom you least expect it. But it was time for the surprise. Toastmaster gave the word to Jenna. She could barely stand on her feet. Well, dear husband, already on these uncharacteristic for the girl words and intonations. Many of the guests tensed up. You're my man, bright, talented, cheerful. You like surprises and variety, so to speak? Well, I thought I'd keep up. The theme is rough video, she commanded the videographer, to whom she had handed the flash drive with the video in advance. He didn't know what was on it. On the screen began that very movie with the birthday boy James and Wendy. There was a surprised gasp from the audience. Some, laughing, "Turn that off right now," shouted James. "It's all a montage. Don't believe it." The video stopped. There was a pause in the hall. Wendy cried and ran out of the room. The birthday boy continued to insist that it was a fake. The guests, not knowing where to put themselves, began to disperse. Charles, as Emily feared, had a heart attack. Happy? Are you happy now? And what did you accomplish by your prank? The normally unflappable James acted. Jenna looked at him with a completely blank stare and gave him the middle finger. I'll cure it myself. You've dug your own grave. Your reputation is ruined. I'll take the clinic off your hands and take the redhead away from my agency. Finita la comedia, my friend, parried the enraged woman. But we'll see who's who, James said hatefully. He broke the glass and quickly unfastened his tie and walked toward the exit. The wedges came up mate, Emily. Vanessa was crying. Emily was nervously fumbling. With one on Charles' finger, ammonia was pumped out by the paramedics of the ambulance who arrived on the scene. Fortunately, it turned out that there was no threat to life. Why are you like this, daughter? Wailed mother. How was I supposed to act, Mom? Kill her and offer her another girl to choose from? Jenna couldn't calm down. That's not what I meant. That James is a womanizer, I told you long ago. It was predictable. Divorce was imminent. But why bring it out of the closet? You could have just quietly split up and been done with it, Vanessa said. You couldn't. Let her know that Jenna criticizes. You can't wipe your feet. Let everyone know that, pronounced Jenna and sobbed. Emilia put her arms around her. Let's go to sleep, girls, she said to mother and daughter. The morning is evening and ancient. What's done is done. The woman agreed. The ambulance was just about to give Charles the help he needed. The family drove home, realizing that their old life had crumbled. The next day, Jenna could barely wake up. At first, she thought she had dreamed the situation at the restaurant, but then she realized that it had all happened on his. Her parents were already awake. The first to enter her room was Charles. Jenna shamefully covered her face with her hands. I'm sorry, Daddy. The only one I'm not ashamed of is you, but I had no other choice. The daughter began to explain. There's always a choice, honey, but you made one. I can't praise you for it, but I won't judge you either. Just be aware that now you'll have to take responsibility for it. Wise words from your father. I understand, Dad. I'll solve the clinic issue. I'll take over everything. No more partners, Jenna promised. The clinic is fine, but what about the broken heart? Charles asked. I'll figure it out. You know I'm strong. I'll go somewhere to dispel it, and then I'll solve all the problems, replied the girl. A couple of days later, she went to Moscow. It was this city, where she had lived for many years, that recharged her and filled her with energy. She walked her favorite streets, met with friends, went to her last job. She returned home a week later. It was impossible to stay in the capital for a long time. It was necessary to solve business issues. What was her surprise when on her return she found that James had already hustled and re-registered the clinic for himself. He'd gotten ahead of the curve. Jenna's feet had been knocked off the ground. She was worried about how her father would take the news. But surprisingly, Charles was calm. Daughter, peace and health are more important, believe me. I finally realized that. Don't get into this war. Take care of yourself. You've had enough of your own agency, Jenna's father urged. But there were difficulties on that front too. Emily told Jenna that James, through intermediaries, encroached on this business. But it was detected in time, and for the time being the process was suspended. But you realize he's not going to let it go. We'll have to hire the best lawyers and prepare for a fight. Emily, we'll do our best, Jenna replied confidently. The business wars were taking a lot of energy, both physically and mentally. And all this against the background of personal drama. But Jenna didn't think of giving up. However, she needed to relieve stress somehow. For this, she resumed jogging in the park near her home. She used to do sports regularly, but then she relaxed. Time was catastrophically short, so she had to run either early in the morning or late at night, when it was already dark outside. Aren't you scared? How about a fitness club? Sign up, asked a concerned Emily. Don't worry. The park is lit up, and I need fresh air, replied the business lady. That's the thing, it's not well lit everywhere, but you know better, summarized her friend. Soon after this conversation, Jenna had some kind of anxiety. She even thought about whether her friend was wrong and whether she should really go to the gym. But the girl chased these thoughts away. Planned my sneakers and set out on my usual route. It was 23:15 on the clock. There was almost no one in the park, only a couple places where there were loud teenagers standing around ineptly hiding beer and cigarettes. Jenna ran one lap and the excitement let go. She dumped the stresses in her head, running through scenarios, her next steps at work. It was a distraction from the outside world as well. The runner was completely immersed in herself. It was at that moment that a pack of dogs suddenly jumped out at her from behind the bushes. Jenna only had time to notice a pair of embittered eyes of familiar eyes flashed behind a tree. She had seen that look before, when years ago she had refused to let the son of the owner of the orphanage fall in love with her. The dogs knocked the girl to the ground and began to bite. Jenna screamed loudly, but since the park was sparsely populated, people did not rush to her aid as soon as they would have liked. By then the girl was already lying bloody and losing consciousness. By the time the ambulance arrived, she had passed out. She woke up in the hospital. Her mom was standing next to her, terrified. "Where am I? What happened?" Jenna was surprised. "You don't remember anything at all?" "Honey." Barely holding back tears, the woman asked. "Somehow, yes," said the daughter. "You were attacked by a pack of stray dogs during an evening walk in the park," Vanessa explained. "Yes, I'm starting to remember now," Jenna replied. "I even remember there were 6 of them." "That's awful." Mom couldn't hide her tears. "What's wrong with me now?" asked her daughter. "Lacerations to your arms and legs and a concussion." "You were hit when the dogs knocked you down," explained a nurse standing nearby. "But it's not that bad, is it?" Jenna tried to be optimistic. "I'll be able to walk, won't I?" "Yeah, sure, but you'll have to rehabilitate first." "The injuries are pretty serious," the nurse added. "Oh, this is bad timing," the patient said. "But if we don't have a choice, we'll get treatment." The girl had to spend at least a week in the hospital. However, she could not return to work immediately afterwards. The injuries proved too serious. For the duration of her sick leave, Jenna appointed Emily to run the agency. "I'll do my best, girlfriend, you know that. But your hubby is dead serious, so I suggest we find some good lawyers. We have some serious defenses to make. In fact, I see the point in calling them in from Moscow." "There we worked with real masters, shared her thoughts colleague. "I fully share this opinion and trust you completely. So go ahead," gave Emily her blessing Jenna. They had already lost the clinic, although Jenna believed it was only a matter of time. But to lose her brainchild of a profitable agency, which in addition recently opened a promising branch, could not be. The Birds had told Jenna that James was working in conjunction with Wendy. She had seamlessly transitioned from mistress to girlfriend. "And I told you that girl was going to make a mess of things. Mark my words, she's going to leave James pantsless in her time. He'll regret who he messed with," Emily urged her. Jenna nodded but remained silent. About that, Wendy had already begun to act. There was no doubt in the girl's mind that Wendy Mason's brother had set the dogs on her. That pair of eyes behind the tree, burning with anger and revenge, she would never forget it. It was soon learned that the investigative committee had launched a probe into the dog attack. That's good. Let them look into the matter. Maybe they will finally convey to the authorities the importance of animal shelters, and they will start to support them. Because people like Michael spend their whole lives doing good things, keeping dogs under supervision, taking care of them. If it weren't for shelters and people like that, we'd all be walking around bitten. Vanessa reasoned aloud. Jenna did not upset her with the news that she had been attacked by dogs from the shelter, the same one their family had been helping all their lives. The girl herself didn't know why she was keeping this information a secret. But her intuition told her to act that way. She thought she'd decide what to do with that information when she was more or less recovered. For now, in addition to the wounds on her arms and legs, which constantly hurt her sanity, the effects of the concussion were interfering. 2 weeks later, an investigator called her in for questioning. He had to establish all the circumstances of what had happened and understand the situation. Jenna was already feeling better and was able to get to the IC office on her own. She knocked on the right door and was extremely surprised to see Wendy and Mason's older brother Jacob in the office. Jacob was all she could manage to mutter, "Oh, or rather, Jacob Mikhailovich, is that you? I thought you worked for the police." "Yes, Wendy, I work here." "Sit down, please," answered the man with a steely voice and pointed to a chair. Jenna obediently sat down. "Well, let's begin. Can you tell me exactly what happened and when? Was there a dog attack? When exactly 2 weeks ago in the park near my house on Prospect Mira, Jenna began her story. The investigator listened attentively to the victim and wrote everything down. When the girl stopped reconstructing the chronology of events, he asked an important question: did you notice anything unusual that evening? Did you? Jenna answered confidently. She realized that this was the time when it was finally time to reveal all the cards. When the dogs came at me, I saw a young man, behind a tree. He was hiding and he looked very scared, but also angry. Do you suspect he had something to do with what happened? That he sicked the dogs on you? Jacob clarified. I don't just suspect it, I'm sure that's exactly what happened. Without a shadow of a doubt, the girl said. What is the basis of your certainty? Inquired the investigator. On the man's identity. After all, I recognized him. Jenna continued. And who was it? Asked Jacob. The girl paused and said, It was your brother Jacob Michailovich, your sister Wendy? Mason. The investigator put aside his pen. No matter how hard he tried to hide his emotion, his excitement, his surprise, he failed. Are you sure it was him? He asked the girl. I'm absolutely sure, Jenna answered without a second's hesitation. I know your family well, including your brother. You may remember that at one time he was in love with me quite a lot. But from love to hate, as you know, is one step. And the fact that I humiliated your sister helped make it happen. I'm sure you know about my husband's anniversary. Are you? The investigator answered briefly. Well, then you must also have a grudge against me. I'm already afraid to even imagine what this whole test will bring me. Perhaps you too will want to take revenge on me and will do it somehow through the law. To make me look guilty for this attack, Jenna said. I haven't had much contact with my family in a long time. We're too different. That's not the point. The law comes first. That's what's at the top of the list, impartiality. I hope you're not cheating, Jenna said ironically. The investigator decided not to comment on this remark. The interrogation ended and the girl went home. She understood perfectly well what a difficult moral situation Jacob had brought her into. He was to make a check against his own brother, even if it was the one with whom he was not very close. But after all, blood wasn't water anyway. Why should it bother me, though? Jenna asked herself, and yet the thought wouldn't leave her mind. I don't know why, but the next day she came to the office again. I'm here to see you, she said, opening Jacob's office. He again could not hide his emotions. The man was extremely surprised. It was also noticeable that he had clearly not slept last night. There were signs of fatigue and sleeplessness on his face. Come in, of course, have a seat, said the investigator, pointing the victim to the same chair as yesterday. Jenna sat down on it and began her monologue. You know, Jacob Mikhailovich, I may have jumped to conclusions about recognizing the man behind the tree. Maybe he wasn't even there at all. I was so frightened, anything could have happened. The girl gave it to me straight. The investigator was surprised. Are you sure about that? He asked. Absolutely, assured him Jenna. Good, then I'll edit the interrogation report, said Jacob. Please do, replied the victim. In fact, that's all I came for. If there are no more questions, can I go? There is a question, said the investigator and hesitated. But no. No questions. You're free to go. Thank you, goodbye. The girl said goodbye and, limping, went to the exit. The effects of the bites were still evident. That same day, Jenna told everything. Emilia. So you really didn't recognize him? Asked her friend, puzzled. No, of course not. I recognize him from 1000. You just decided it was the right thing to do. Are you out of your mind? It turns out that there was an attempted murder on you. You know the perpetrator, but you're lying about it never happened. Why? What the hell is this? Emily wouldn't let it go, because if I insisted it was Mason, the orphanage would be shut down. And what would become of those poor dogs? Even though there aren't many of them left. And this is another one of those things I can call my life's work. Besides, Mason, I realize he's out of his mind, and he's been out of his mind for a long time. I feel sorry for him, you know, Jenna explained. But Wendy, she's probably involved in this story too, isn't she? The friend inquired. I don't know, I'm not sure. Maybe it was purely her brother's initiative and he decided to defend his sister's honor. And even if she had a hand in it, I've already erased enough of it by showing erotic movies of her to the most prominent people in town. Although who knows, maybe she did me a favor. After all, now she has such a spicy visit. Maybe one of the prominent officials will decide to use her services in the future, and her career will go uphill, but in a different direction. Emily joked. The friends laughed. A month later, the investigation into the dog attack case was completed. The municipality, which paid insufficient attention to the presence of stray animals on its territory, was found guilty. Officials were fined, obliged to catch all stray dogs, neuter and vaccinate them. Shortly thereafter, Jenna received a phone call from Jacob. Could we meet not as investigators, but as old buddies in an informal setting? He inquired of the business lady. Yes, of course, replied Jenna. The meeting was scheduled in the park. Jacob was visibly nervous. I don't know where to start, he said excitedly. Jenna, I want to thank you. Yes, let me use your first name. So I want to thank you for not telling me the truth about Mason's presence in the park. So you didn't believe me, didn't believe that I didn't see anyone. The girl was surprised. Of course I didn't. I'm a smart man. The investigator compared the facts, everything fit together. His presence in the park was logical and reasonable. There were motives to hold a grudge against you. Plus, on the day of the first interview, it was obvious you were telling the truth. And when you came to change your statement, it was clear on your face that you were lying, Jacob explained. Yes, I have always been bad at lying, Jenna joked. Unlike I know who you mean. The investigator didn't let the girl finish. And Wendy. I feel bad for her and for this whole situation. Sis, I've always been in trouble, I know that. When I was young, I tried to influence her, but then I realized it was a lost cause, so I left the family. I was always different from them and felt like an outsider. I understand that. You don't have to make excuses. A son is not responsible for his father, as they say, Jenna said. I'm glad to hear you say that, Jacob said and added. Jenna, I was in love with you when I was young. You always came to the orphanage so cheerful, so alert, so full of energy. I also admired that you were from a rich family, and it was kind of out of your league to take care of stray animals. But you did it, and you liked it. And you liked it. And you've always been very pretty. Jenna, are you serious? Why didn't you say something? She finally gave it away. I thought you were out of my league. What was I? Just a guy from a slightly crazy family. Who were you? A delightful girl from a well-to-do and very human family. There are inconsistencies in my head, but a lot of it is because of that, to reach you, to grow up, to become worthy. I split from my folks and went my own way. First went to law school, then university. Although it was very difficult. But I prepared. I didn't sleep nights, and in the end I passed the entrance exams better than anyone else and passed on the budget. In the end, what do we have? What are we now? I'm a senior investigator. Who are you now? The head of the clinic and the agency. You're still way ahead of me, and I can't catch up. Jacob, everything you just said is so stupid. I really liked you when I was younger too. I liked you a lot. But you always walked a little apart, kept your distance, were unapproachable, and it seemed to me that you despised me. So I forbade myself to even dream of you. And as for the current state of affairs, senior investigator is unrealistically cool, especially considering the path you've traveled to this position. But me. I don't own the clinic anymore. My husband took it from me after the scandalous video. My ex-husband, by the way. I filed for divorce, and the texting agency is in jeopardy. I have a deal with him. At exactly that moment, Jenna's monologue was interrupted by a phone call. It was Emily. Yeah, I got it. Okay. Cell phone ringing, what about us? So what's next for us? Come on, you're kidding. It turns out we win. Hooray, hooray, hooray. Yay, yay. Jenna shouted excitedly into the phone. Then she explained her behavior to Jacob Shaw. Fortunately, it is possible to exhale from the agency. A colleague called and said that our Moscow lawyers had worked clearly. As we had hoped, they had cut off all the risks. Now this business is not going to be taken away from me. I told you I won't let anyone wipe their feet on me. I'm very happy for you, Jacob replied. But you also mentioned the clinic that was taken away from you. I'm afraid to be immodest, but I can help in that matter. Perhaps I will reveal to you the secret of the investigation, which is absolutely impossible to do, but I cannot otherwise. In fact, your ex-husband has long been suspected of fraud, and on a large scale, and in respect of him has been under investigation for a long time. There's a lot of evidence, so he should be prosecuted in the near future. It must be a little painful to hear such things about the man you once loved. But it is what it is. No, it's okay. To each his due, Jenna replied philosophically. And what do I owe you for this valuable insight? Absolutely nothing. Although Jacob smiled slyly. In light of the new details, I'd like to ask you to give me a date. Not one like the one you're on now, which is more like a messianic psychologist and a secret conversation between intelligence officers. What about the real thing? How do you feel about that? Extremely positive. Just give me a little time to heal my wounds so I can show up in full dress. Wait, okay? Asked Jenna. Also smiling, Jacob exhaled with relief. I've been waiting for years. What's a week to me? It's like one moment before our happy future.